So here we are again, Nikki, and this is the second part for the first episode about what happened in Portimao in Portugal. We're talking about, well, we come to the part of the consequences. And there was a mistake there, and there's a penalty, and there's a steward panel, and there's that wasn't an easy issue too. We know that on Thursday, first of all, the riders are all going together into a pre-season debrief, briefing by everybody in authority in Dorna, IRTA, FIM, and you know what's going on in these briefings because every rider in any discipline has to go through a debrief before he's going on the track, and it doesn't matter which discipline he's taking part of.
Exactly, or which level you are at. So also during the MotoGP Championship, the riders in all category before the first race, basically before the first practice, they have an annual riders briefing where the FIM stewards refresh the memories regarding the rules. They point out the most important ones, also the changes, just, like first day in school. So maybe it's better to be reminded a couple of things. But normally this is like a routine, like 20-minute stuff or whatever. But this time it went more than an hour. And if we wouldn't have the photo shooting on the grid, which was, by the way, live broadcasted, so really the time was important to go with, then maybe it could have went over, I don't know, 1 more hour or who knows. And clearly the first thing that we started to ask around the riders, team managers, because also the team managers have been there, what was going on? And the only one topic that made negotiations, I don't want to say issues, but negotiations there, was the penalties.
Yeah, we know the penalties have been a top problematic issue for quite a few years. But there's, with MotoGP becoming so tight, so intense, and also with all the worry about the sprint, which everybody knew that you just open the throttle and you go until the finish line. Riders knew that there's going to be issues, and especially everybody in charge of the championship knew that there might be some issues, so they wanted to clarify some things. There wasn't a big change in the steward panel for this season. We do see Freddie Spencer still standing on top as the, how do you say that?
I think he's the leading or main MotoGP steward. Let me check, because I did it during the weekend, but now I already forgot.
His exact title. But he is chosen by Dorna and IRTA, and then next to him there are two stewards brought by the FIM. And the thing was that the attitude is to be more strict. What the steward panel said also that they will try to be more equal in their decisions and the punishments, and not to miss anything, and not to do what was the main criticism in the last few years, that wasn't equal, the decisions and the penalties that were given. And the riders were told that touching will be resulted in punishments. And what we saw in a different way, we saw the points a few years ago. We saw a few things like that they were trying to do with, especially with the Moto3, but it didn't feel like it was in a structure. And now they seem to give a more clear structure of the punishment.
Yeah, I think if I found the correct word, I think he's chairman. I think chairman of the FIM MotoGP. I hope that not this time I'm not mistaken.
If somebody missed that until now, both of us, English second language, and yours, how many do you speak now? Spanish, Italian, Hungarian,
yeah.
English. What else?
Yeah, I'm Hungarian, so that's my mother language: English, Italian, and Spanish. Yeah,
Yeah,
I try. As you can see, I try. So yeah. By the way, adding to this media briefing, that was mainly held by Andreas Somolinos. He's one of the MotoGP stewards this year, next to Freddie Spencer, and we have also Tamara Matko, just to being really precise. And
yeah, she was brought in from she was the safety officer in Superbike, and she was brought in from there.
Yes, so basically these penalties regarding the clashes, the request is coming from the riders and from the teams from the previous years, because in the last couple of years we saw more and more, and as you also mentioned, the penalties were really hectic. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, sometimes harsh, sometimes not hard enough. So the riders wanted to understand the limits, and if they do a mistake, not on purpose, a mistake, consequences, what the consequences are. So basically, these things are not written in the rule book, in the famous yellow book that we could see in the hands of Gino Borsoi in Austin. And
that by the way, anybody can read that. If you go to fimlive.com, you can go there to documents, and you can find all the rule books of all the championships and all the punishments and everything official that comes out from the FIM.
Yes, you will find list what kind of penalties existing now currently in MotoGP. What you won't find is if a rider clashes, then this and this will happen. And this is not a mistake. This is basically kind of an agreement in all the participants, so the organizers, FIM teams, and I think riders as well. There are some protocols that they follow, and they try to put into to make all the situation as clear as possible. But again, sometimes it's really difficult to judge a crash, a clash, then how you judge the penalty. So really, the thing that another rider get injured, that should be the way to put in the balance, that penalty or no penalty.
That's the problem, because, for example, with Marc crash, this thing is that he did these kind of actions before, but he managed to get out from them safely with not hurting any other rider in the past. So that's part of the debate. But also we can understand a little bit the protocol, because it's like any law, you have the sub laws that are not in the rule book, but you know that people have to follow. So that's the thing. And another thing about the steward panel, that's why often we see on the screen that the incident will be investigated after the race, because they are trying to prioritize in case a rider is still on track and a rider has crashed, or both have crashed, then it's dealt a little bit differently, just not because of the punishment, but to able them to take the time after and to keep watching the race and to keep watching the action that is actually going on the screen. Because we have also to mention that they are not only seeing what we see on the screen, they see a lot more, because in the last few years, there was a lot of pressure on the steward to follow everything that is happening on track and not only the leaders. So they see what's happening in the back, because as we heard from riders in the past, mainly in the lower classes, what happens in the back is sometimes a lot worse than what we see on TV, on the screen, because less experience, more dramatic, more, depends, a few reasons for that.
Actually, this is one thing that Aleix, again, Aleix, lucky us, he is really outspoken. So yeah, we can rely on him. So Aleix mentioned after the race that they had a lot of touches during these 2 days. Just if we just talk about the sprint and the race itself, like himself was hit by Brad Binder during the sprint, if I'm not mistaken, and fallen back lost and then had to fight himself back to the front as much as he could. Also, but yeah, or maybe that was
also,
no, I think that was a Sunday
teammate.
race. Sorry, that was a Sunday race, because during the sprint it was Alex Marquez who hit Maverick Vinales. So we had a lot of crashes, and what Alex said, that he doesn't understand that we have hundreds of onboard cameras now, almost on every bike. He said, I'm only myself, I have four or five cameras on my bike. So what the hell is going on? Sorry, I'm more or less quoting Alex, that the MotoGP stewards don't watch back these images, because don't forget, they have also the broadcast, then the helicopter views, then they have the CCTV. So every circuit has cameras all around the racetrack. So if any accident happened and the broadcast cameras are not on that, then they can see it. By the way, that's why the free practice 2 was stopped, because the race direction couldn't see any images from the track. So yeah, they have a lot of other images other than we can also see.
And they also, we have to remind them, they also have extra help during every session. They have extra people watching the screens, assisting them. Usually there are also people coming from the track itself, so they know the places, they know exactly what to look for. And they have the tools. So that's part of the criticism of many of the riders, many of the teams, because for them, it's supposed to be a bit clear. They have more tools actually than we have. And they also are getting the data, if they want to, from the teams. And they are able to see all the data of what the bike was doing at that current time. And also we see the sectors divided into 4, but they can see it divided into a lot more. And they can see the division. They can see how fast a rider gets from one point to the other. So they can see a lot more data than we have. They're supposed to be able to judge it a bit more equally because of all the tools that they are given. And that's where the criticism comes from, because it's not he said in that case, but it's something that is in the papers, in the books, and we know that in MotoGP data.
Yeah, so let's go back to the penalties themselves. So one thing I would like to clear out, because I also got a lot of questions during the last days. From this year, we have the sprint and we have the race on Sunday, the Grand Prix. So if a penalty has to be served during the next race or a named race, let's come back a little bit later to the birding stuff. What I wanted to say, that serving a penalty during a race every time means the Sunday Grand Prix, okay? Never the sprint. That has been, by the way, clarified already last year, because I think when we had the press conference with Carlos Espeleta, if I'm not mistaken, I think he...
immediately.
Sorry?
They said it immediately. It wasn't a doubt. There's a race and there's a sprint.
Okay, yeah. So
sprint, if we're clear on the names.
Yes, it's not sprint race anymore, but only sprint. So it's easier to avoid all the misunderstandings. So yeah, this is one thing I wanted to clarify. And then yeah, let's talk about the penalty itself.
So we got a list. We have a list that we more or less know. We didn't get that, of course, in writing, but we did get the comments from the riders. So we know that, and we actually saw that with the penalties that both Joan Mir and Marc Márquez got. The first penalty for something like that is a long lap penalty, a double long lap penalty that was going to be executed in the next race. Then we have a pit lane start. Then we have a ride through, or is it the other way around between these two? I don't remember. And after that, we already have a black flag for a race, which is a very, very, it's a very heavy penalty. And it's something that no rider wants to be a part of, no team wants to be a part of, because that can have a lot of implications. not only on the pocket of the rider, but also on the pocket of the team. We need to remember there are a lot of sponsors taking part in this championship, and it's really important. And no rider wants to get there. And we know that this, for Joan Mir and for Marc Márquez, this is the first step in the row, and we just started the season.
Yeah, exactly, this year. But already one thing, I'm not sure whether you noticed or not, that if I'm not mistaken, Joan Mir got only a one long lap penalty for the clash that happened between him
so
and
maybe the riders didn't remember all the way that goes, but we do understand that Joan Mir issue was a little bit less dramatic than Marc Márquez, but because again, we didn't get that in writing.
Exactly.
There's people, you amongst other journalists, spoke to the riders. They told you some of them did share it, some of them don't share it. We're not going to say exactly who shared what, because they're not supposed to share what's going on in the room.
Then clearly we can start to talk about whether a long lap penalty, or for example a double long lap penalty, is enough for a clash like this or not. But
so again, let's say first what people, not on our side, not on the covering side, but inside the paddock, thought about that. And in this case, the team that is suffering from that incident, because since then, even though Marc at the beginning thought that Miguel is fine and the team thought he's fine and Miguel thought he's fine, a second check on Monday morning in Lisbon indicated that he does have a problem in the knee, and he will miss out at least Argentina, and we're waiting to see what will happen with Austin. And we know the knee is a serious issue. It's not a broken arm or a scaphoid or something like that. So yesterday we got an email.
Yes,
another accident, Nikki. We got an email, and it usually doesn't happen like that. We usually see something on the social media. We usually hear it in another way. We get an email from the press of MotoGP. This time we got emails from the team. That was a little bit of a surprise. But if you follow Razan Razli on his social media, you can see that he's fuming. He was furious, and he just mentioned stuff on his social media for the people who are friends with him there, that you could see that he is not going to sit down on this. So I'm going to read the email that we got. So, Cripodata RNF MotoGP team, following a recent incident of reckless and irresponsible racing displayed by Marc Márquez against Miguel Oliveira, is pushing for harsher and severe penalties from the FIM stewards. MotoGP races, whether it be a sprint or main races, are high speed and high intensity, where every rider wants to win at all costs. However, such aggression behavior can often lead to dire consequences, not only for the riders themselves, but also for their fellow competitors. The incident at the recent race between Marc Márquez and Miguel Oliveira should serve as a wake-up call for riders in MotoGP, Moto2, and Moto3. Thus, the imperative that they are reminded of the severity of punishment for any kind of reckless and irresponsible racing. Cripodata RNF MotoGP team condemns such behavior and strongly advocate for stricter penalties to deter future offenders, including the team-owned riders. We urge the FIM stewards to take quick and decisive action against such reckless riding, setting example for younger and upcoming riders in Moto3 and Moto2. We believe that safety is the top priority in any sport, and MotoGP must take necessary action to ensure the safety of all its riders. We look forward to supporting the FIM stewards in their ongoing efforts to develop a safer and more responsible racing environment. Thoughts, Nikki?
Thoughts. So I think that a long lap penalty, most of the cases, is not a real penalty. So if we go back to the past, penalties were more severe. We could see more often riders being banned, for example, from a race if something really strong or serious thing happened. And don't forget, for example, Jorge Lorenzo said it a lot of times because he made a lot of mistakes during the first years of his career in the World Championship, and he just never learned. You know, again, we are human beings. The one thing that made him think when he was banned from a race. So there was a reason in the past why they used this penalty, for example. Then everything changed. We get this penalty point system, and after a certain point, you get this penalty, that penalty, blah blah blah. Then it was the complete system was cancelled, and we went back a little bit to the old system, but with new type of penalties. For example, this long lap penalty. And when I say that it's not every time a real penalty, and also it depends on the track, how long, how many seconds they lose. But sometimes it just makes the racing more exciting afterwards. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, we when we think that Marquez is going to execute his penalty in Austin, that his land, it adds a little bit more fire to it in that way, because we remember what happened in Argentina when he was banned. When he got the penalty. So it's something that is already in a way expected, and we don't exactly know how he will deal with it, because as we said in the previous episode, he did look devastated after this crash. So something will go on, and the rider is spending time now at home more than he expected, and he did miss seeing Messi's 100 goal last night in Argentina, because he missed that event and his brother went there alone. So there's a lot of things that he needs to sit now at home and think about. And we also need to think about what it means for the penalties and how much they can make it more severe, because in a way, I assume they don't want to have riders miss any races, because there's a TV and there's a show and there are people coming and paying a lot of money to come and see a certain rider. So, but you know, and it's not, let's just put it on the table once. It's not an easy job.
No, it's not an easy
panel is not an easy job. It's not easy to make these decisions. It's not, because there are so many circumstances, there are so many things happening, but at the same time, I can't say that they are making a perfect job at the moment.
Unfortunately not, but as you said, it's not an easy job. But again, and maybe in the future we can do another video regarding this, that you know, whether business side and the sports side, because then most of the time these two are just not getting along together. But that, I think that's a completely different topic. So back to the penalties. Aleš was really clear again, Aleš. He said for him this mistake is a one race ban. But then other riders, like for example the top three guys, Pecco Bagnaia, Maverick Viñales, and also Marco Bezzecchi, during the press conference, they said that turn 3 is a really easy place to make a mistake. So then again, the deliberation come to account. But there was another thing with this penalty, the wording of it.
Yeah, but and I looked back, because I have every penalty that was ever given almost since I started doing this on my computer, and I look back, and some of it says next round, some of it next says the name of the next round, which means that if it's not happening there, it's not happening anywhere. Now, it's not the first time that this is happening. Mm-hmm. It's not the first time that we get this kind of issue. It's not mentioned in the yellow book what's going to happen if a rider misses an event. And Niki, you're stuck.
Am I?
Yeah.
Now you are stuck.
Okay. So as we said before, there's an issue with the wording. A rider is presumably supposed to be in the next race. What happens if he's not? In this case, let's say that the stewards could see that there's an issue when they handed him the penalty, because the riders was already casted. He had a cast on his arm already at the moment that they were giving him the penalty, and the penalty said that it will be executed in Argentina. So then the journalism, the media started to chase to understand what it means, because there's no resolution to it in the yellow book.
Yes, so, and the funny thing that basically the sanction was a double long lap penalty from the Gran Premio Michelin de la República Argentina MotoGP race. So just say, it's just playing with the words. But so if the next year's race would be sponsorized by Michelin again, so the name would be also in 2024 Gran Premio Michelin de la República Argentina MotoGP. That could have been also a penalty for next year. Clearly, it was never the case. But what you just started to say, that we journalists started to ask questions, because this sanction and the wording was just incomplete. But this is not the first time they put the name of the next GP at the place to be the penalty to be served. The thing is that in the past, we didn't have problems with it, or maybe if we had
a few problems. But the thing, it's not looking at the penalties that we're giving, it's not always the same thing. Sometimes it is like that, sometimes it's like that. It's not every time they're saying the name of the next round. Sometimes they say the next round,
exactly,
because we had Vietti in Moto2 and it said next time.
Yeah, I also checked back my emails only from 2017, and since 2017 to till now, we see 3 different wordings. Sometimes this, sometimes that. So as Tammy said, next race, or your next race, or the rider's next race, or a given GP, so a named one. But this is not the first time. Again, I have to say that in the rule book, in the yellow book, things are missing. I remember really well. It was, I think, in the early years of 2010. I think it was a case in Moto3. What I for sure remember, that we've been at Valencia, so last round of the championship, and we had a rider with the penalty, and I think that was starting from the back of the grid. If I'm not mistaken, that was a Moto3 race, but we are talking about 10 years ago. What happened, that the race was interrupted. There was red flag. And that rider had to serve again the penalty, because that time it was not written in the rule book.
Now it's written in the rule book.
What happens if a race is interrupted? At that time, I went to speak to one member of the FIM, who happened to be a Hungarian gentleman, Mr. Rezső Bulcsú, and I'm not sure what his title was at that time, but afterwards he became the director of the road racing department. And I asked him, Rezső, what's going on? I mean, this guy had to serve the penalty 2 times. And then they changed the rule book for the next year or whatever.
To somebody who doesn't know, the rule book is being updated at least every 3 months. That's why they don't like to print it. And again, every time it changes, you can see the red marked, the red words marked. It means that was the last change. And they do add it every time, but there's a lot of things to think about, and not only that, sometimes things are missed. At this point, the wording should have been more clear all the time, and the same text. That is something that I'm sure will be changed now, because we actually did have that a few years ago with Bulega, I think, that was injured, and there was a thought, I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was Bulega or Manzi, that we thought that they might start the race just to get rid of their penalty, so the next race they can go in clean and just to start the race, even though they knew that they had some kind of issue. I'm sorry, I don't remember if it was Manzi or Bulega. I'll try to freshen my memory, but I just couldn't find it. So this was an issue that was addressed to the FIM, and we did get a clarification, and the penalty was served again with an addition that it will be executed, the penalty will be executed during the next race that the rider will participate in. And as you raised an issue, this is in case they have, again, a protocol, that's one thing, but if they don't, this is not legal because there was a penalty, it was given, then it's not legal. And then there's the secondary debate. What should HRC do if it's legal, if it's not legal? What I said, and I still believe in that, I don't think they would go to, they can go to CAS and or TAS, as ever you want to call it in English or in French, and probably legally, it won't hold.
Yes.
But there's a deeper issue here. And I don't think they even consider going, especially because Marc took the responsibility and said that he deserves the penalty and he agrees with getting a penalty for his actions.
Yeah, it's a complex thing again. Actually, just yesterday afternoon or evening, Paco Sanchez, the manager of Joan Mir and other riders as well, and don't forget, he is a lawyer, and he just tweeted that HRC should appeal about the decision that, I would say, the changing of the sanction, because the first sanction clearly said Argentinian GP and nothing else. And in the rulebook, there is nothing about what happens if a rider not participating the named event. I'm pretty sure, as you also mentioned, I'm waiting to get an update on this part and this article.
Yeah, and I won't be surprised if the announcement, the official announcement by HRC will say, even though the punishment was changed, blah blah blah. We, as agency, we accept our punishment. The rider accepts their punishment, and thus we are not going to because they, not the same as with Mir, they did go and try to ask to cancel that.
Yeah, they appealed. Yeah, they appealed, but they lost.
Mir, but they did not appeal for Marc accident. So
they didn't appeal for the original penalty, but I also agree with you, but I don't think they will do anything, even if legally they could win, in my opinion. But again, we have to consider, or they have to consider, all the reaction and everything is going on now. But on the other hand, Austin could have been a really good chance and possibility for Marc, because we know how fast he is at that racetrack. So again, the moral and the legal and the financial part. So I think there's a lot of things that they have to consider.
But there's also another thing that they need to consider. Marc is maybe one of the riders that is the most controversial in the World Championship for many years now. You like him or hate him, you adore him or hate him, and you can appreciate his riding and his abilities, but then he gets a lot of hate. A rider that will use a legal mistake, we can say this is a mistake, of not paying attention to a detail to get his penalty evoked when he clearly took responsibility for his action, and he is trying to show us that he feels remorse, will be a mistake.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think they will do it, but for sure, again, something happened, and of course, it's with Marc Márquez, so it's a huge one. Then the crash was not enough, but then a mistake with the penalty wording, so it's just so typical, in my opinion, that it happened this way.
As we both know, our social media was very active because of that. There's response, there's things going on because of that. So in a way, some people might be happy.
And yeah, and last thought on me from me on this, that I'm pretty sure that if Marc is fit to go to Austin and race there, the attention will be huge, and everyone wanna see what Marc Márquez is capable to do with a double long lap penalty at Austin.
Let's put it this way: if Dorna do not put a shoulder cam on Marc for this race to see him doing the long lap penalty twice and trying to overtake riders, huge mistake, as Julia Roberts once said. Huge mistake. We need to see that.
Yes, I think, if I'm not mistaken, riders can still choose whether they are okay with the shoulder cam or not, because don't forget that extra weight. Then
it's an extra kilo. It's an extra kilo.
Exactly. Yeah. Now it's a half kilo, the camera. But also it's a little bit, this can be disturbing, I would frame this way. And he had already a lot of injuries with the shoulders. I don't, do you remember whether he had already? I'm not sure. I don't remember whether he had already.
I don't think he had. I
remember Quartararo, and I think he was the first, and then Ducati, Pecco had a lot of times, Aleix also.
Rins, I think, with Suzuki, when he was in Suzuki.
I think Alex Marquez is. I cannot recall Marc now, but we can double check.
I don't think he had a shoulder cam, but I do hope he will, because this is gonna be a treat. Because listen, it's he loves this track. He will do whatever he can. I hope he does it clean. We're not sure yet how it will affect him. We know it will have something, because we've seen it before. Not to compare, but yes, to compare. We've seen a rider like Fenati, who was aggressive. We've seen that incident with Munzi. And we saw how he came back to the world champion, and there was something that went missing afterwards. He was very he was thinking about it a lot, and we even heard it from the people in his team, said that he lost too much of his aggression because of being too much aware to how he's behaving around his rivals. So I don't think it would be that far with Marc. He's more mature, he has more experience, and yeah, with all the credit I give to Fenati, it's not the same, but we might see something there.
So that's about the penalty. The penalty.
We said 15 minutes.
A bit more, yeah. Again, thanks for being with us this time as well. We're coming back soon with the next episodes. Let's see when we can.
We'll still try to do it before Argentina.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for being with us, and see you soon in the next episodes. So Tammy, here we are again without posting our second episode, which was planned to do basically 2 days ago. But on that given day, the news just came in that even if you thought that HRC wouldn't appeal against the modified decision, the modified wording, they did.
Yeah. And well, I admit to my mistakes, and you learn from your mistakes, like every writer you will ever hear say. So also journalists and commentators need to learn from their mistakes. But the thing is, I thought they wouldn't appeal because of decency, because they took responsibility. They know Marc is guilty of making a mistake. Puig admitted to that. Marc admitted to that. We talked about his physiques, his face, everything. But legally, there was the problem, like you stated, and that's why they decided to follow up, because they made it also clear in their wording, if you look at it carefully, that the problem was not the punishment, but the process.
But the process, yes, as we talked through. So let's be clear. The MotoGP Stewards Panel just made a mistake with the wording of the sanction.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, according to the rule book, at least, you cannot just change it. So, 2 days later, sorry, guys, it was a mistake here. What we really meant, it's the next race. Maybe it's not the Argentina, but sorry. And I completely agree with the facts. And I think we should emphasize one thing. The appeal, at least in my opinion, and I didn't have the chance because I'm not in Argentina to ask Alberto Puig or anyone from HRC team. This is not about the sanction. It's not about the double long lap penalty.
It's about changing something.
It's about the system, right?
And that's why we talked a little bit before, and I told you that I have a gut feeling that there were some phone calls before, and not to Dorna. I have a feeling that there were some phone calls, because we do know there's the MSMA. We do know that they talk. We do know that they went back to talking. This is a completely different issue. But I have a feeling that Puig told Aprilia, told Ducati, told Yamaha, told KTM that they are about to do that, because they are not against the punishment. They're against the way the process is. And we heard criticism about the steward panel for quite a few years from the teams, from the manufacturers, especially from the riders. And these teams, these bosses, they need to support the riders and they need to make them feel protected. But as we saw with the message from Razvan Razli and RNF, they really need to. And this is a chance to make some order, because they just want it executed better. We also talked before, to those who don't understand why it's so important, because the simplest example that we talked about earlier is when you watch any entertaining cop program, and you see the cop arrest the bad guy and he doesn't read him the rights, the guy walks away, and it doesn't matter what he did a few minutes before, and that everybody saw him. If the rights were not given, he's allowed to go free. So I'm not comparing Marc to those bad guys in the TV shows, but that's the law. That's how it works. If you didn't exercise the law as you should, then you have a problem.
Yeah, so what we know now is that HRC team appealed against the modified verdict decision, let's frame this way. And according to the rules, it went to the FIM appeal stewards. And they had already a meeting about this today. So now when we are recording this additional part for episode 2 is Thursday evening. And what we also know that the FIM appeal stewards basically referred the case to the MotoGP Court of Appeal.
Yeah, that's the next step.
That's the next step. Which means that the MotoGP Court of Appeal, according to the rules again, they have maximum 4 weeks to learn everything and to make and get a decision.
And again, we assume that it will not take 4 weeks. It will take a lot shorter time. They will make sure that it's happening a lot quicker, because they need to make a decision, we guess, by Austin, though we will talk about it in future, because we're not sure we will see Marc in Austin. So that's a process. We understand why the process is going. We understand where it's going, more or less. We both have a feeling how it will end, because it doesn't seem like there's any reason to hold the punishment because of the mistake. We all know it's a mistake, but as we said, mistakes happen also on track and off track.
Let me be the bad cop here a little bit. You know, Tammy, you're guessing during this process.
Yes.
Let's see whether we arrive with this case to CAS or not. Hopefully not, because I don't think that the sports need it or anyone need it.
I hope it won't go to CAS, because I spoke to a lawyer before and he says that it will not hold for sure if it gets there. So I guess that at this time there are some lawyers involved also from the appeal of MotoGP, and they know what it means, and they know that the HRC people also consulted with lawyers before going through all of this.
And I would like to just add one more thing, reading basically a tweet of our really good friend and colleague, David Emmett, Moto Matters, if you don't mind, and if I don't make any mistake with this recording.
Mind.
Sorry?
I certainly don't mind. Go ahead.
So the tweet I would like to read from him, that the protest launched by Repsol Honda team included a request for a stay of the penalty, so a temporary postponement, basically. The statement issued by the appeal stewards didn't mention the stay. Seems like to be granted, though. And this is really important. So now an appeal and the legal process is ongoing, but every time it's important to understand whether, let's say, this pause and stop the penalty in this case, or maybe the judgment, or the decision can arrive, let's say, too late. So this is also really important to understand first whether Marc will be at Austin or not, whether he can race there or not, whether by that time there will be a final decision. So it's really complicated, I would say.
I guess there are some people very upset about all of this in Geneva and in Barcelona. So I think that it will be dealt very quickly, because our colleague and friend also mentioned about another case about the spoon a few years ago, and that was judged pretty quickly. So I assume the reply will be very quick this time. They have to respond quickly, because part of the criticism about this whole process was always that it took too long and it wasn't clear enough. Judgmental, the system needs to be very open, very clear, very understood. That's part of the whole criticism of everybody, because everybody just wants to understand, okay, this is what you do, this is what you get. Of course, it's flowing, it's changing every time, it's different. But you know, judging MotoGP racing is not that simple, because there are so many factors. But the rules need to be clear, the process needs to be clear, it needs to be quick, so people will understand what they're doing, where they're going, and when they need to appeal and how. Because I don't think agency will back down. If they will dismiss their appeal, refuse their appeal, they will go ahead, because legally, I have no doubt that they are right in that side. But you know.
But the time frame can be a question.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we would like to add at this stage, or now we really try to close
my fantasy, my solution fantasy. I just hope that, and I'm gonna give an association coming from a completely different world. Gwyneth Paltrow is suing these days an optometrist for $1 because he accused her of banging into him during ski. She's doing it not because she needs the money. She's doing it just to get her point across. My feeling is as you stated before, because Honda just wants to push this idea that they need fixing, that part needs fixing in the whole process, that Marc will show up after his punishment is dismissed because of legal issues, and will just do a double long lap penalty. That's my personal fantasy. And why? Because he knows he's guilty. He knows he needs to do that. He needs to show everybody that he's taking responsibility. To say that it will happen, that's a Hollywood movie. But, you know.
afraid it could be a really good Hollywood movie. I'm not really sure whether we will see it.
Well, they are filming the next season already for Marquez, I think. We saw that he's surrounded by crews all the time. So this is
all the things happened during the first weekend already. We could do like four episodes at least on any streaming platform series. I don't want to name now any of them. So because it was too hectic. And it unfortunately still too hectic. But hopefully from tomorrow, well, we can talk about also racing and action on track. Just one last theoretical question. I'm wondering whether all of this finally will we see any changes in the MotoGP Stewards Panel? That's a theoretical question. Don't go in details because
I just gave the reply. I think so, but we'll get there. We'll get there. We will chat about it once. We'll get there, I think.
So now we really try to close this episode 2 about the penalties. For sure, we will continue because this case is still ongoing. So we will update you.
Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you wish for. Give comments. But remember, concession, we're still in concession.
So good. I just wanted to add this. Okay, so bye for now.